Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Gatekeepers. I am Bishop-elect Vanessa M. Brown. I am happy to be here with you on this evening. And so before we get started with our conversation, tonight we're going to be talking about the Great Reckoning, surviving a Christianity that looks nothing like Christ, with the author Stephen Mattson. But before we get into that conversation tonight, I want to find out where you are coming from. So please, I welcome Facebook Live. I welcome Twitter. I welcome YouTube. And I welcome IG. All of you that are here tonight, tell us where you are from. We want to shout you out. We want to shout where you're coming from on tonight. I see family that's here. Thank you for being with us tonight, Carol and Gilchrist. Everyone here tonight, shout it out. Tell us where you're from so we can get it down. And do me a favor. I see folks are from Dallas, Texas here. Clear Lake, California. This is good. Houston, Texas. Glad that you're here tonight. Make sure you share this Facebook Live. Let folks know that we're having this conversation. Paris, California. Thank you, Minister Sandy. Kansas City, you are here with us tonight. Bradley, Illinois is in the house tonight. We're so glad to have you. New York City is here. LA is here. This is so good tonight. I'm so glad that you're joining us from all across the country. Boston, Massachusetts is in the house. And so we just wanted to shout you out. Before I bring my guest out, I see you, Pastor Naomi. So glad that you're here tonight with us. And so our guest tonight is a great author. I have enjoyed his book. We took the opportunity in our New York and New Jersey church to actually do a study of his book at the top of the year, The Great Reckoning. And it's powerful. revealing, and it's a change agent. It's a transformation piece. You all should get the book. It is sold through Amazon, but I want to bring the author on right now. Greetings, Stephen Mattson. He is a writer and a blogger, a great author. So glad to have you tonight, Stephen. Will you greet our audience tonight?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me on the show, Bishop-elect Vanessa Brown. It's an honor to be here. I'm checking in from Minneapolis, St. Paul area. So I hope you're all safe and warm where you are, and it's great to be here.
Thank you so much, Steve. And of course, the next person is not a guest. And let me just shout out Florence, South Carolina, Flint, Michigan, Rochester, New York, San Leandro, California, Grand Prairie, Texas. All the saints are here. The saints are here. Chicago, Illinois. Our great bishop is here with us, Bishop Carlton D. Pearson. He's an author, progressive spiritual teacher, and thought leader. Bishop Pearson, will you come and greet our audiences tonight?
Hello, America, friends across the country and the continent, of course, and whomever may be watching from around the world. A lot of trouble in our country today. A sick church creates a sick society. There's also natural disasters that are sort of somehow pulling us together in a way that politics and other things have driven us apart. It's sometimes when natural disasters occur, people start dropping blankets instead of bombs. And so maybe the universe is correcting itself and expressing itself through insisting that we pay attention to the more delicate, important issues of human beings being human. I'm really excited to hear from Steve, and you'll hear most from him tonight. Already we know he's a brilliant mind and he's a bold spirit, or he wouldn't write. And I think he's prophetically led and anointed to say what he's saying to the church. The scripture says, cry loud, spare not, lift up your voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgressions. God's people do have transgressions. The house of David, their sin. If my people call by my name would humble themselves and pray, turn from their wicked ways. God's people sometimes have some wicked ways. So we're not going to be critical. We're going to be observant and make reference to things that might be a little bit uncomfortable, but also comforting. So stay tuned. Call your mom and them. Tell them to tune in. We're going to have a great time tonight.
Thank you so much, Bishop. And so I want to just lay a little groundwork. Bishop Flunder will not be here with us on tonight, but she sends her regards. So what do we do when the church looks nothing like Jesus? Many followers of Jesus feel disillusioned by a broken religion, one that loves political power, promises prosperity, and feeds on fear. And we are desperately trying to rationalize how a loving God can be connected to unloving churches, institutions, and people. And so tonight we have this great man of God who is with us, who is going to help us unpack that. And he wrote a great book called The Great Reckoning. He's got another book as well that we're going to touch base on too, but The Great Reckoning is what we're going to talk about. And so, Steve, I'm so grateful to have you in our presence tonight. I'm going to ask you this question, with regards to the book. And so basically your book offers a great unpacking, what I consider to be a great unpacking of a particular type of Christianity. And in it, you deconstruct a lot of what you were told was kind of essential to belief in this certain strain. So my question is to you, who do you expect this book to resonate with the most? And who would you say the book is for?
Yeah, great question. I think the book I would expect to resonate most with people who grew up in a certain faith environment, largely influenced by their family, parents, pastors, or whatever, but people who, after growing old, living different life experiences, learning new things, experiencing new things, have started to realize that there's a disconnect between the Jesus that they read about in the Bible and the religion and rhetoric that they're hearing from their specific faith community. So for me, I went to a Bible college, and after I graduated, a lot of my friends were giving up on Christianity, not necessarily because they didn't admire Jesus Christ and love Jesus, but because they were just sick and tired of seeing the hypocrisy of people being sexually assaulted by church leaders or people within their church, or people experiencing racism or xenophobia or misogyny, or all these different evils and forms of oppression that were happening from their church. And they just saw this huge gap between the reality of Jesus and what they were receiving from their faith communities. And I think a lot of people are going through that right now. And so I would expect the book to really resonate with those people who really don't want to give up on Jesus and believe that God is an all-loving God who wants to really help people. And, the greatest command, love God and love your neighbor as yourself. People who still believe that, yet at the same time have reached a point where they can't reconcile that with the practices of their faith community for whatever reason.
I understand that. And I wanted to just build a framework for it, because this next question is for you and Bishop Pearson. So much of the book is geared towards white evangelicals, in my opinion, right? Deconstructing that kind of faith. But in the end, you talk about the hope that lies beyond that. And I do think there are a lot of people in process of that are in the process of deconstructing their faith. What would you say then comes after that? Because I think the temptation for many may be to completely disaffiliate. And of course, if you look at Pew records and all of that stuff, you'll see the rising numbers. So what would you say is the next appropriate step?
Yeah, good question. I personally would say look to the person of Christ and look to Jesus. And I know it sounds cliche, especially growing up in a church, hearing that, but it really is the hope, because, there's a saying, Christians are following a perfect Christ, but we are imperfect. So everything good about Christianity can be traced back to the person of Christ, in my opinion. And everything bad can be traced back to Christians because we're imperfect people. So I would say try as hard as it is. And I know there's a lot of trauma and just bad situations that people really need to get out of for their own sake, whether it's their own personal, physical health, well-being. You need to leave those situations right now for your own good. But don't give up on the fact that Jesus loves you and cares for you. But Bishop, what would you say?
Well, I agree with what you said, but I don't think that most people on the planet dislike Jesus. Even Mahatma Gandhi said, I may have become Christian were it not for Christians. Jesus, who is called Christ, not by Jews necessarily, the first century Jews, but the messianic mind is powerful, and everybody is looking for something messianic, including in their own soul and their own self. But as I've said many times on this program, white Christians in general, but not exclusively, have gotten King James and King Jesus mixed up. Both of their mothers are named Mary. One's Mary, Queen of Scots. The other is supposedly the Virgin Mary, or at least a woman of marriageable age, who was Jesus's mother. Probably somewhere between 12 and 15 years old, if not younger, when she had Jesus. That's how the virgins were in those days. But the idea of we talk a lot about white supremacy. I think our problem today is religious supremacy, particularly among Islamic and Christianity beliefs, more than Jews, but Jews as well. The Abrahamic faith, we think we're the right ones. So we have this condescending attitude about everybody and even about each other. Jews are the original chosen. We Christians believe we're the chosen. Then 600 years after us comes the Mohammedans, ultimately the Islamic religion. And so there's conflicts even among us, and that is spilling out to the world. Our arrogance and competition with each other has now spilled out into the world that we're supposed to be reaching with the love of God. People really like Jesus. even non-Christians and people who will never confess him as Lord. They still like what they hear about him. We're the one that ruined his reputation and his witness in the earth. And we've done it more severely the last, especially since Donald Trump became president. We have almost totally ruined our witness in the earth. And I'm hearing from people from all over the planet. We're saying, what's going on with you guys? You built wells for us, clinics for us, and schools and orphanages. Now you're embracing a man who considers us shitty country. Excuse that terminology. I don't cuss, but if I would do it, I'd say it that way. So, so we have to work through this, and that's why your book is important. And even the non-white church has bought into a lot of that principle that we should go into all the world and preach the gospel to all the creatures. Now, in English, creature is not a human. It's an animal. It's a monster. It's a rodent. And so in some people's mind, particularly some white evangelicals, we'll never be anything but creatures. That's Africa, Asia, India, anything that's not Anglo-European white. And that sounds a bit racist, but that's how slavery occurred in this country. Enslave them and save them. That's what they did. And so they think that we're better off by being Christians because we're not worshiping heathens from Africa, Asia, and India. So that's a long story, but that's the way I see it. And we need to correct that. And your book is bringing a lot of that correction, I think, Steve.
Yeah. I think one of the most important and overlooked things that especially white Christians can do right now is just get a good grasp of history and historical accuracy. And I think a lot of this new deconstruction in white evangelical churches is coming from a point of people are realizing, oh yeah, all this stuff really happened. And then you have the pushback, all of this, opposition to critical race theory and everything that's going on because people don't want the historical facts out there. All this legislation is like, we don't want to learn about slavery. We don't want to learn about, the genocide. And colonial Christianity, in North America was introduced through genocidal slaughter and enslavement. And then you have a lot of mainstream churches, even up through today, from the very point of the genocide through today. It's just time and time again of especially mainstream white churches being on the wrong side of history. And then when you bring that up, there's typically two reactions that happen. One is people start this deconstruction process, I think in a healthy way. They're like, oh, this is, like you said, we love the person of Jesus. This is not what my faith is about. But then you have the opposite reaction of, no, we're not going to teach this in our schools. We can't do this. And then you have all this opposition to critical race theory, and it becomes this partisan rhetoric and propaganda from people in an attempt to quell this truth of all this history that happened. And it's frustrating to see as a Christian because, we claim our religion is about truth and seeking the truth and the ultimate truth. But when we deny basic historical facts, people look at our message and are like, well, if you don't think that this happened, I'm not going to believe you when you tell me about, this God that you believe in, if you can't even admit basic historical facts that happen. Yeah, it's very disturbing.
Wearing masks has made America smell her breath. Mm-hmm. And we've got a lot of truth decay out there. And so breath COVID is a respiratory disease. It's a breathing issue. Our lungs, our breath, our spirit. The church has decided to react in fear rather than to act in faith. There's a reaction to white Christianity dominated mentalities and cultures in America shrinking because we have more African Americans, Native Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, Arab people coming here from all over the world. And Christianity is not going to be dominant as it has in the past. And that's okay. But they don't think it's okay. Right. They think people are going to do things to them that they have sown seeds to be done. White men like you, who are men of faith or women of faith, who speak out the way you do, it's heard louder than when we do it. Because we've been people of color. We've been screaming and marching and demonstrating for hundreds of years. But for some reason, when you have the guts and the gall to write and read and say what you're saying, it adds so much, because there's a lot of white people who agree with you, but they've been afraid to say it. Yeah. You had the guts, and I might add the balls, if you will, to get out there and say it, right, or write it and live it. You're very healthy for the nation. And so you are I think you represent the church of the future, not what's happening right now. As far as white Christianity, but all of us are going to join together in a very wonderful new rainbow of beauty and promise to the world, that the best is yet to come. And it won't just be Christianity. It'll be a different spiritual paradigm.
Yes.
Because our religion is judgmental. Our God is judgmental. People are afraid of that God. There's a lot of psychosis or mental illness because we're believing in an invisible entity that knows our thoughts. Mm-hmm. I was talking to, happened to be a young man, white man today, a Pentecostal, same gender loving man, brought up in the United Church of, let's see, what is it called? UPC, United Pentecostal Church. He's sick, not with AIDS. He just has come out of COVID. He's wrestling, and he really loves God and really follows Jesus. Goes to a predominantly Black Pentecostal church, but his people are just stressed because he just had a loved one die who plays the instruments in the church, and he's a drug addict. You know, Pentecostals, Baptist folks, y'all can smoke a little bit, but Pentecostals, we're not supposed to tip, dip, sip, do nothing. And a lot of them the preachers are having mental breakdowns. They're closet alcoholics. Some of them are drug addicts. They're struggling with a lot of things about their relationships with their spouses and with their ministries, with their doctrine. So the cognitive dissonance has put a bunch of psychosis out there. So what we're seeing in the church today is a public nervous breakdown. They've picked a fight with the 21st century. They are saying they don't want a woman's choice. They're against critical race discussions even. They want to erase history because they feel like they're being victimized by history when they have historically victimized the culture. And so there needs to be some repentance, which just means rethinking what we're going to do. And I think we're on our way there. It's gonna get a little uglier before it gets prettier, but it will get prettier.
Yeah, it's been getting ugly for a good while now, Bishop. And you've been saying that. I want to continue to shout out people. Nashville, Tennessee is here. Cincinnati is here. Durham, North Carolina is here. Charlotte is here. Lancaster, Texas is here. Welcome to Beyond the Gatekeepers tonight with our guest, the author, Stephen Mattson. Stephen, in the first chapter, you write, Christendom's solution for any spiritual struggle is to dive deeper into itself. How do you see that related to what's happening right now in the middle of several pandemics, namely COVID and racism?
Yeah, I think, well, let's look back the last couple of years. We have a worldwide pandemic. We have extreme racism going on, police brutality. We have one of the worst refugee crisis in the world, immigration crisis. And what happens during this time? Millions of Christians in the United States, and again, a lot of predominantly white churches, dedicated their time and energy to put out a statement against social justice. Of all the things they could have done, they put out this big theological statement against social justice. And that was just a revelation to me of like, this is just, people aren't getting it. And what happens is, take, for example, when a church, there's a survivor of sexual abuse, for example, and they bring that up to their church. Typically, what happens in a lot of cases is the church protects itself at the expense of the victim, at the expense of, not every case, but a lot of times it does. And that's kind of a microcosm of what's happening in a lot of churches in America today, especially predominantly white churches, is we're hearing these cries from all sorts of people. Refugees, immigrants, victims of police brutality, people who are falsely incarcerated, all these people, and they're crying out. And we see the truth. And what happens? The church responds with opposition to critical race theory. They don't want to see it. They don't want to see it. They don't want to hear it. It's not our fault. They dive deeper into themselves and create this shell, and they put out all these theological statements on how social justice is evil. It's this rhetoric, propaganda. We can't do all this stuff. And so instead of embracing this opportunity to love our neighbors as ourselves, instead of, taking in refugees, immigrants. Here's this opportunity to really reflect the love of God. It protects itself at all costs at the expense of loving others. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
You have a second book. I'm going to let Bishop Pearson go and comment on that too. But you have a second book that's a devotional on social justice. And I feel like that particular book is a healing balm to the Great Reckoning. Like if people can just get out of themselves and get out of their ego and read that devotional book, it's going to help people along the way. And so I want to say we appreciate you for writing that devotional as well, Stephen. Bishop Pearson, what say you with regards to us being in the middle of this pandemic, being in the midst of racism? But Stephen says, let's dive deeper into itself. Christianity should dive deeper into itself.
Well, Christianity has a militant mindset, and there's a lot of violence in its origins, from a young girl getting pregnant at 12 without her knowing it, to the violence and viciousness with which crucifixion or asphyxiation on a cross occurred, that we celebrate as the great act of God to save our souls. But the church has decided to fight rather than to flow. They're resisting change. They're resenting change. They don't recognize the importance or that God is in change. The whole human race is being upgraded. The species is being upgraded. The universe is correcting and perfecting itself and clearing and somehow cleansing itself, all from global warming to the purges that are occurring throughout the consciousness of the nation right now. When you resist it, you're resisting what you know in your soul is right. And that's where the Christian church is right now, particularly evangelical Christianity. They want to fight every change. They're not thinking about a witness. They're not thinking about the love or light of Christ. They're thinking about the institution. And most people don't like living in institutions. The institution of Christianity is under assault. One of the reasons I think Donald Trump was raised up is to expose what ultimately needs to be expelled from the consciousness. And they went through the church to create him. The church gave us Donald Trump. The white evangelical fundamentalist church primarily gave us Donald Trump. Everybody around him is in trouble, including him. Everybody's being indicted. Everybody's being arrested. Everything he touches. And ultimately, the church will regret that they embraced him and will look back on history and say, we were really on the wrong side of history. A lot of Christians know that. We need more voices like Steve to say it clearly and directly and vociferously and adamantly, so that they are, because about 12 to 1,500 Christians leave the church every day. That's a Barna report.
Absolutely correct.
About 1,500 ministers are leaving the ministry.
Clergy are leaving. Mainline clergy are leaving. People are retiring early. People just getting out. And the bottom line is that people are done. They're tired.
They're done.
And we've not come up with a good excuse to make them stay.
Right.
We've not come up with a good reason for people to stay within the bounds of Christianity based upon their actions. Yes. And they have no one to blame but themselves. No one to blame but themselves. So in that vein, Bishop, then, and Steve too, to both of you all, this question, do you think, this is from Bishop Sonia Williams, Bishop-elect, do you think if Christians stop sanitizing Christ and preach equally his humanity and deity, the church would be less hypocritical?
Absolutely. Jesus didn't preach his divinity. He preached his humanity. And he didn't just preach truth to power. He preached power to the powerless. He said, I have been anointed to preach the gospel to the powerless. That's what poor means. We're busy just trying to talk. The church itself needs to re-empower itself, not religiously, but we need to be outspoken about our humanity, because that's how we relate to the masses, to whom Jesus has such great appeal, as has already been said. People love the Christ person and the Christ principle. And many love the Christ purpose. They just don't like the Christian institution that is so defiled and really now defamed the name of Jesus. We've lost contact with the human aspect, hurting people. So we need to get back to identifying with people who are suffering, who are oppressed, and in America, the number one sin is slavery. I hate bringing it up, but and I wouldn't say that much about it. We wouldn't have to, but the church itself says, don't talk about it. You're insulting, don't hurt. The kids want to know the truth. They're saying, are you kidding me? Did my grandparents and great-grandparents, white kids are saying this.
They want to know the truth, and we want to obfuscate. We do not want to talk about it.
And these kids are hanging with atheists and agnostics and Hindus and Muslims. They have a lot of same-gender loving friends. Some of them are same-gender loving themselves. They're very free and comfortable with it, but their parents and grandparents and the church culture says, no, you can't hang with non-Christians or non-believers or anybody that breaks what we consider the moral codes of our denomination. And these kids are saying, basically, to hell with all of that. I'm going to love who I want to love. I'm going to hang with who I want to hang with. At least I want to talk with people who I don't always agree with. That's beautiful about the young people.
That is really beautiful about the young people. I'm going to let you go, Steve, because let me just tell you, you got high school students right now, they are loving whoever they want to love. They have trans people that go to in their high schools and know how to use the right terminology and know how to talk about, LGBTQI plus. They know how to have these conversations. If 14 and 15 and 16-year-olds know how to have these conversations and they're in high school, why can't the church have them?
Yes.
But that's not a real question. Steve, you can comment. Go ahead.
Oh, you're exactly right. I live in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So obviously when, George Floyd, Daunte Wright, that's here in my home. And so lots of people are coming up to me and being like, that's all we were talking about, for a year, at your workplace, in the store, whatever. But then you go to church and especially, predominantly white, they ignore it. There's not, they're like, well, let's do this Bible study on Luke or whatever, and they don't address the reality of the world. And again, it's escapism. It's avoiding responsibility. It's perpetuating white supremacy and racism. It's like, how can you not address the situation that is here and now? You're in Minneapolis. You're a church in Minneapolis. And to see that happening. But to backtrack a little bit, that question. One thing I love about that question is that what you'll notice a lot of forms of oppressive Christianity and religion do is they don't focus on Jesus at all. And what they'll do is they'll weaponize the Bible. They'll take out specific verses of the Bible and kind of contextualize their own version and agenda of what they want to do. And you can use the Bible for anything. The Bible was used to rationalize slavery here in America when it first came out. People would take specific verses out of the Bible and twist them up. And you can literally use Bible verses to rationalize anything. Even the one thing in the Bible that Satan used to tempt Jesus, what did he use? Scripture. He said the Bible says when he's tempting him in the desert, of all the things Satan could have used, he used the Bible to try to tempt Jesus. And it's amazing because one of the things you'll notice that a lot of these oppressive forms of Christianity do is they'll use Christian symbolism, they'll use scripture, theology, or whatever, but the person and the life and words and actions of Jesus are conspicuously absent. They're gone. Because if you were to focus on Jesus, you can't get away with this stuff. You can't do it. And that's why all these people, they'll quote Bible verses and everything, but Jesus is gone. He's out of the picture. And so that's always a key thing in all of these situations. These really oppressive churches that perpetuate white supremacy, racism, colonialism, all that stuff. Jesus is gone, and they publicize we're a Bible believing church. We're a biblical church, quote unquote biblical, but they aren't a Christ-like church. They aren't like Jesus. And so, yeah, I love that question. Instead
of social justice, they're saying just us. We're the only ones that count. What was it? John Pavlich's letter dear white evangelists,
Yes.
evangelicals, I need to tell you something. People have had it with you.
Yes.
I mean, they're done. They want nothing to do with you any longer. And here's why. You go to the song list, which I'll just read a little of it. They see your hypocrisy, your inconsistency, your incredible selective mercy, and your thinly veiled supremacy. For 8 years, they watch you relentlessly demonize a black president, a man faithfully married for 26 years, a doting father and husband without a hint of moral scandal or the slightest whiff of infidelity. They watch you deny his personal faith convictions, argue his birthplace, and assail his character, all without cause or evidence. That's the witness the church has out there. And that's a white Christian preacher speaking.
Yes.
There's nothing the church has done of late. Now, you can talk about the unborn babies. Most of the pro-life people are also pro-death. They're big capital punishment advocates. They're not against gun laws. They want to carry guns around, exposing them, and then they protect shooting somebody down in the street. I mean, the double standard of the church, we need to really repent, which means to rethink what we believe, why we believe it, and how those beliefs add to or subtract from the quality of our lives. Jesus would not identify with evangelical Christianity were he on the planet today. He'd be as distant from it as possible. And when the scripture says, when he says, upon this rock I'll build my church, he used the Greek, in the Greek translations, ecclesia, ekmeni, out of classes, the called out ones. That could be a Mahatma Gandhi.
Right.
It could be some other social activist in another planet of another religion. It doesn't have to be the Billy Grahams, and I love Billy Graham, or the Oral Roberts, and I love and know him, as you know. But there's people who are not named, and they're not going to see them on Christian television, but they're doing the work of the kingdom, preaching the gospel of liberation to the poor.
Yes.
And that's Jesus, in my opinion.
Yes. So thank you, Bishop. First of all, Kristen Walker, the name of the essay is Dear White Evangelicals, and the blogger, the writer is John Pavlovitz. Okay. But here's this question for you both, but particularly Steve. Steve, you quote Caitlin Curtis in the book. She also wrote the foreword where she talks about being a part of the decolonizing church. I'm curious what it means to you to be a part of the decolonizing church, and what are the appropriate ways to find partnership and allyship with those who are or have been historically oppressed by the church. And how do you partner in that work in a way that does not center whiteness?
Yeah, great question. You know, there's generations of systems that are set up that are unjust and oppressive that we need to take responsibility and action for dismantling those. And Caitlin Curtis is a pretty large indigenous voice in the Christian community, and that's her voice really helped me through this process. And it's a constant. I think it's always hard for people to enter the space, but you have to constantly learn. Partner with people, have a humble attitude, being willing to admit that you're wrong. And so it's like you mentioned earlier, a lot of Christians, especially white Christians, are deconstructing for the very first time for what churches of color have been doing their entire existence. So instead of, there's a lot of pretentious attitudes for people of like, wow, we're gonna take the lead on this and do this, when in reality, the white church needs to step back and just step away. and I know that's hard for a lot of people to hear, because that means giving up on, certain positions of power and that type of thing. And people don't want to do that because they've conveniently used the whole point of colonial Christianity is that it was a way to get rich and get power and get political influence. And it had nothing to do with glorifying God. And when you look throughout history, whether it's North America, whether it's Europe, whether it's colonial Africa. I'm reading the book right now about the Congo and King Leopold and that genocide that happened because of, he was funded because of Christian missionaries that were essentially a slave trade that came in. But for PR, they called it, Christianity. And that is the beginnings of our country. And so first you got to admit that, and hopefully that, the book helped people do that. And Bishop Pearson, you mentioned that earlier, is that unfortunately a lot of people don't read outside their own ethnocentric identities, and they stick within those people. And so, yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but.
So what it sounds like, Bishop, you're muted. Unmute yourself, Bishop. What it sounds like you're saying, Stephen, is you're trying to talk about, sounds like religious emancipation. That's what we need to be. We kind of like need to emancipate ourselves from these experiences that we have for so long. Most of us, we were born and raised in church. I started off as a Baptist. I went from a Baptist to a Pentecostal, to apostolic, then to non-denominational, still yet trying to find my way as a Black, queer clergywoman. And so, and now I'm, a part of the United Church of Christ. But at the end of the day, we have to do something. We are losing a generation of young people who care nothing about church, but they love God. And I'm all right with them. Go ahead, Bishop Pearson.
What I've been observing for the last year, I've been ordained in the Christian church, Pentecostal church, for 52 years, licensed and ordained for 52 years. I've walked with the greatest and the grandest of our genre. I love these men, and evangelical Christians are some of the sweetest, most generous human beings on the planet when they like you. Once they don't like you, they can become, you talking about Mr. Hyde, Dr. Jekyll, or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, whatever. They turn and become demonic. I mean, they will slit your throat. So, but what I've noticed that has been most detrimental to us and non-productive is we have been spiritually incestuous. We don't want to sow into other groups and peoples. It's us doing our own thing with our own selves and preserving our institution and our clique, our clan, our club, our tribal, territorial mentality. And we're supposed to be reaching the quote unquote lost world. We're afraid of the world. Now, we talk about the world. Jesus said, that the world hated you. My experience with the world is they have not hated me. Ain't nobody persecuted me but y'all, you Christians.
Right. The church hated you and the world loved you.
Right.
The world loved you because you told the truth.
Yes.
And the church hated you because you told the truth.
Yes. Figure. I've never been persecuted by a non-believer. I've never been criticized to my face, at least not even in literature. Christian literature has demoralized me and denigrated me, and they'll do the same thing to all of you. I'm sure they'll write stuff about you, Steve, because you're talking freedom and love and forgiveness and acceptance and, celebrating what they only tolerate and won't even barely tolerate. So we need to confront them. And in some places, in some ways, combat that spirit, not just confront it, combat it. I don't want to be belligerent and overly militant, but I do want to be very confrontive. Somebody, a man I greatly respect, a white man I greatly respect. He's actually into New Thought. He was trying to talk to me yesterday. If I named him, you'd know him. He was trying to tell me about how he doesn't like Biden and all the good things about Trump. And I had to stop him. I said, sir, I can't go there with you with Trump. I can't tolerate, and I'm not even going to try to be politically correct. That man is an arrogant, narcissist, racist, bigot, misogynist. He's crazy. He's an idiot. And he should never have been. I don't mind him being an idiot, but not as president of the United States. And he's still infecting, not just affecting, he's infecting the Republican Party. These people are under his spell, and the rest of the world is laughing at him and us. He'll probably end up imprisoned, or he's going to lose his businesses, his billions, and the Christians are still grinning. He's Cyrus. He ain't Cyrus. He's sour. He ain't no prophet. He's ruined our image in the earth, but maybe that's what the universe allows, because Christianity is so sickened and sickening. It needs to change. The late Dr. John Shelby Spong, a personal friend of mine, just ascended a couple of months ago. He wrote the book, Why Christianity Must Change or Die. I read that book 20 years ago, and it changed my whole life. That's when I walked away from everything, or everybody walked away from me, because I started to befriend him. He endorsed my 2 books. I love the man, but what he said, if you've never read the book, go find the book, Why Christianity Must Change or Die. It's not going to change. It's actually dying now as we speak. But that's by John Shelby Sloan. That was a very prophetic book, very intellectually, scholarly, theologically, practically written. And you should read it the same way. It'll really bless you. It'll never be the same. The church that we've known for the last 2,000 years, over the next 5 to 50 years, will dissipate and disappear as we've known.
Say that again. I think the people need to hear that again. What did you say? It will never be the same.
No. Our experience of Christianity for the last 2,000 years, look, 92,000 suits against the Boy Scouts for abuse and pedophilia. That's not to mention the millions with the Catholic Church, all the way up to cardinals. It's not just sexual sins, it's the hypocrisy of these people saying one thing and living another. And so that the Boy Scouts is a predominantly unofficially Christian institution. Same morals, same evangelical fundamentalist influence. 92,000 suits with these men lying to their families. Your sexual preference is your sexual, but to lie and denounce and deny other people while you're doing this is like preaching against alcohol and being an alcoholic. When we had an abortion, when we had a Hannah's Prayer, that's what we call it, adoption agency, and we had a home for unwed mothers, the people I had to talk to the most about abortion and allowing us to take the daughter were white Christian preachers, many of them Pentecostals, whose girls got pregnant while they were here at ORU by a black man. And I said, well, sir, I understand. No, they were anti-abortion until their daughter got pregnant. Now, double standard. And I said, well, I promise we'll keep it very quiet. We won't charge you a dime. We'll nurture the child and we'll adopt it out. We've adopted out hundreds of babies. But they said, no, I want an abortion. Many of them did. And until it's somebody else's situation. So it's the double standard. I'm pro-life and I'm pro-choice. It's the double standard that the world can't handle. So Christianity, all of you need to know, and religion, all the traditional religions are shifting. And we are the apostate church. Remember, the word apostate means runaway slave. So we're the great awakening and the great falling away from that tradition. I wear that title proudly. I'm a runaway slave. I'm free. I've never been this free before. And I'm thinking, I'm going to get up here and shout. Give me a Hammond B3 with a Leslie speaker.
Yes. So we are experiencing the great reckoning right now. It's happening. Oh, yes. Church doors are closing. People have stopped coming. But at the end of your book, Stephen, you talk about resisting in love. And I'm curious, in this current environment, for those who bear the brunt of oppression because of our skin color or gender or sexual orientation, and also our allies, what does it look like to resist in love in situations like what happened on January 6th at the nation's capital? You know, like what's been happening really all over the world. What does that look like? Because I'm a type of flip over table kind of person. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know about this resisting in love. I need you to say more about that.
Yeah, that's always, for me, part of my faith tradition is Anabaptist pacifism tradition. So the most notable Anabaptists are what people think of Mennonite and Amish. And so pacifism is a big part of that tradition that I still hold on to. So I tell people, always look to the person of Christ in my tradition. So resisting in love, people wouldn't say Jesus was passive or that he just let people roll over him, like flipping tables, like you said. Taking God's name in vain is when people use God and religion for greed, oppression, political power. And Jesus doesn't get too upset that often, but when he does, it's for those reasons, because people are taking God's name in vain. And it's the religious people that ended up murdering him. It's the Pharisees and the churches of that time who were just like, he's creating too much resistance for us. And his resistance was acting out of love. And there were times where he would create mobs in towns. Like, he would speak truth and he was run out of town by mobs, and he flipped over tables and he caused a lot of uproar. But at the same time, it was out of truth and love. And I don't think the two contradict each other. In my faith tradition, we're always promoting nonviolence as a thing. But I also know that there are Christians out there who are part of the military and that type of thing, and everyone has their own opinion about that. But it is a hard thing to do, especially when real lives are at stake. These issues aren't just superficial theological issues. People are literally dying, and it's a life and death situation. So I think a lot of times Christians can be flippant, and they can use spirituality to kind of delegitimize people's experiences, and are like, well, just pray about this situation, it'll go away or whatever, when they don't address the root issue of the injustice. And so it is always amazingly hard to keep a loving mindset, especially when you are faced with so much hate and just sheer evil. And I think it's only through the power of Jesus that you do that. Like, not through any willpower of my own or whatever. But yeah, I always try to keep Jesus at the center of that mentality.
What say you, Bishop, about resisting in love?
Love is a raggedy term today. We've overused it. Nobody can hurt you or even hate you like somebody you love or who loves you. Go to divorce court. So I don't want it to sound cheesy when we say love. I like the word compassion, which means you feel my pain, cold passion. When we speak of love, and I'm sure that's the case with Steve as well, we're talking about feeling your pain, identifying with your pain, and relating to it. Then, because so many people will grin and say, we just love you. It's like all these churches that say all are welcome. That doesn't mean all are wanted. I mean, a family reunion will tell you that. Everybody's welcome. You don't want all your relatives there. Minnesota's called the land, I think it's 10,000 lakes. That's one of my favorite states. I've only gone there in the summertime, only once in the winter. But you don't want to be the land of 10,000 lakes or 10,000 fakes. I mean, when you think of the Christian church in that state, it's been all eyes of the planet has been on Minneapolis because of George Floyd and the police abuse situation. Even today, it's still in the news. You represent, Steve, that it isn't just fakes out there in Minnesota or Minneapolis, 1,000 fakes, but really lakes of flourishing water and moisture and beauty and quenching thirst and watering the plants and of the earth. That's what the church should be overall, a well of living water. And so love is saying, okay, I identify with you, young man or woman, trans, and tell me your story. What do you mean when you say you're a man in a female's body or a female in a male's body? Let's talk, baby. Tell me what you mean by that. Let me feel your pain, because especially we people of color who've been rejected all our years, and for us to be insensitive to an atheist, say, okay, when you say you don't believe in God, which one of them don't you believe in? Because I don't believe in a lot of them either. When he gets through telling me who he doesn't believe in, I said, I'm an atheist too. I am an atheist who is a theist. I'm a theist for sure. I believe in God, but not the one that said he don't like me and that he repented that he made me and then flooded the whole planet. That's the one in y'all's Bible. So being compassionate and dealing with this thing, feeling the fear. I understand, and as an arrogant Christian, and I didn't consider myself arrogant, traveling all over the world, when they know you're a Christian and they know you're an American Christian, they treat you differently, better in most cases. And I've been on all 5 continents, and I've never been mistreated because I'm an American. Lately, I have been. But I was, we have the truth. I'm here to save your souls and save your culture and clean up your world and get clinics and feed you poor dastardly, God-forsaken people. He sent me here to save you. That arrogance we've been having for at least 2,000 years, and now it's rotted us. And the world says, who the hell do you guys think you are? You're the only ones that are right? So I'm having to correct that in my own thinking, because I'm an old time, I'm 69 years old. I grew up the old way. You young folk are bright and smart and more alert, and you don't have as much to unlearn. The Christian church, you cannot learn without unlearning. We have to evolve while dissolving. You can't evolve without dissolve. There has to be dissolution with evolution. Some things have to go away. We're talking about the deconstruction. We got to let some stuff go. And I'm still letting stuff go. I mean, I admit it. I'm still being corrected and doing a lot of self-correction, self-investigation, self-expression and exploration. And so it's wonderful. It feels good to unload all this stuff. So I'm saying to our audience, whoever you are and whatever age you are, you younger people, I'm a student. I'm learning from you. Bright minds that are freer, I'm listening to you, because I'm still evolving and dissolving at the same time. But I'm happier and freer than I've ever been in my entire nearly 7 decades on the planet. I love Jesus with all my heart. I serve the God of peace. And even I have to let the other one, the false gods go. I'm letting them go. I'm firing them. And recognizing a new, much broader, less bitter God.
So thank you, Bishop, for that. So to both you and Steve, are we guilty of idolizing denominations, reformations, and churches? This is a question by Cheryl Robinson Moore.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a great question. And even when we look back at the New Testament, Bishop, you were just talking about this a few seconds ago, but deconstruction, essentially what Jesus is doing to the disciples is deconstructing their previous assumptions. I mean, a lot of them were zealots, or they were like, oh, the Messiah is going to come through this political kingdom, and they had no idea. And Jesus is bringing them through this process and changing their minds. And when you look at what we now see as the New Testament, a lot of these letters that Paul is writing to the early church are letters of correction, because they don't get it. And the entire reason he's writing these letters is because they're doing it wrong. And they need a little correction. So I think the church even has a tendency to idolize the early church. Well, if we just, the early church was perfect. No, it wasn't. I mean, Paul is chastising these churches. And a lot of times church institutions aren't set up for quick change. And that can be good and bad. It can protect good doctrines, but it can also protect a lot of oppressive doctrines. Just like a lot of denominations for hundreds of years, generations upon generations upon generations, like slavery was a doctrinal accepted thing to do. Interracial marriage, that was illegitimate for, up until recently. So just because it's part of a tradition for generations doesn't make it right. And I think Christians definitely idolize denominations, and especially a lot of church leaders too, because it's self-serving. If they're paying your bill and they're cutting your check and you're making money, and you have political power and influence from especially these denominations and churches, it makes it that much harder for people to walk away from that and denounce that.
Yeah. I want to try to wind down. But the question I want to ask you, Steve, is, this is the last question, then I'm going to let you all give your final statements. Why did you write the social justice devotional?
Yeah, good question. It was a follow-up to everything that was going on with Trumpism, with the predominantly white church. And there was this narrative coming out that social justice is this evil thing, social action. And what they're describing is the life and words of Jesus. Helping the poor, helping, loving our neighbors, the greatest command that Jesus is telling us to do. All of a sudden we have these churches proposing that is somehow a bad thing. So I wanted to counter that narrative and just be like, you know what, it's a tradition, it's a social action, social justice and justice within our society is not only a Christian tradition, it exemplifies the life and words of Jesus. And so that's the reason I wrote the devotional, and hopefully it'll help people in that way.
Tell us the name of it again, Stephen.
Yeah, it's called On Love and Mercy. There's the copy. On Love and Mercy, a social justice devotional. And yep.
So listen, Beyond the Gatekeepers audience, if you want to get those two books, The Great Reckoning and On Love and Mercy, you should do that. One of them is, the Great Reckoning is just telling the show enough truth. He's telling what needs to be said to the right people. And then the social justice book is for me, in my eyes, it's a balm. And it will heal a lot of things if people place the principles that are in that book into practice. So I want to say thank you for that, Stephen. Bishop Carlton, do you have any last remarks for us tonight?
I'm asking everybody to be willing to do what John Lewis said, get into some good trouble or create it. Make a fuss. Stir the boat, rock the boat, I should say, and stir the pot. Feel passion, feel and take action. We have to let our voices be known. Again, I quote the scripture it's an Old Testament passage, cry aloud. Don't do it privately, cry openly. Spare not. Lift up your voice like a trumpet. And we've been trying to reach the world. The church is sicker than the world. We need to show God's people as people of God. I've looked at my transgressions, and I've said many times I apologize for my arrogance and my ignorance, for being insensitive and cold and critical. Even of other denominations, this whole incestuous thing that we've done where we have our own club, the word neighbor really comes from two English words, nearby. A nearby hood. Communion is common union. Community is common unity. But Christians think that means Christian unity, Christian union, Christians nearby hood. And we've got to get out of that mentality and change the way we interpret or define those terms and really get outside the neighborhood. Or if your neighbor is an atheist, love your nearby. If you have a gay couple living across the street, wave, speak, offer them to come over and have a piece of cake with you or to share a piece of barbecue. If you have a Hindu family that feels, or an Asian family that feels already denigrated by the culture, publicly embrace them. Find the ones that nobody else wants to be around, even if it's not an economic situation. They have just as educated as you are. They make as much money, live in your same nearby hood. Reach out to them, love on them, go out of your way to nod to them. And if you see an integrated couple, don't avoid them. They think you're going to hate them. Walk right up and just, hey, how y'all doing? What beautiful children, if they have children. You don't have to make a big conversation, but just affirm them. Love them. If you see somebody that looks trans, they're not completely evolved and they don't look completely finished, and people are looking at them where they feel weird, walk over. How you doing? What's going on? May I have that? Ask them, even if it's an unimportant question, just ask the question to affirm them as human beings being human. Let's get active is what I'm saying to we gatekeepers. Keep the gate open. You're going to keep the gate open and go in and out yourself. That's what I'm doing.
That's great, Bishop. So appreciate that. Stephen.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, exactly what the bishop said.
Wonderful. Thank you all for joining Beyond the Gatekeepers tonight. Incredible conversation. Thank you, Stephen. Wonderful author. Get the books, The Great Reckoning. And you can get it on Amazon. We've got it posted in the chat. We've got it posted everywhere, so you know where to purchase. And then he has On Love and Mercy. It's a social justice devotional. and you can pick up their book as well. I have both of them. And so you need to go and you need to get these books. You need to read them. You know, I know the holidays are coming. Christmas is right around the corner. People are going to be gathering for dinner. Sometimes, you know, at some point it might get political. It might get to religious conversations, so forth and so on. And what I would say to you is stand your ground. At the end of the day, you don't got to throw the turkey off the table, but stand your ground, and be confident in what you're saying and know what you're talking about. And you may want to bring a friend with you that's going to have your back. I know you're around family, but these conversations get tense, and I don't think avoiding them is what is going to help. And so I want to encourage you all during this holiday season to have a conversation with somebody you've never had before, and then have a conversation with people that you have had conversations with before to see where they are and see if you can move the dial forward.
Leave the turkey on the table, even if you want to throw the turkeys from the table that's sitting around the turkeys.
Amen. Leave the turkey on the table. Don't mess up the food now. Come on. Somebody's going to put a lot of effort and hard work and money into making sure this dinner happens. However, be firm and stand your ground. God bless you tonight. Thank you, Beyond the Gatekeepers. We have a few commercials that we want to, advertisements we want to say to you tonight. So please stay with us. Beyond the Gatekeepers, please support our broadcast by sending a donation via Cash App to $TFAM annual or to PayPal at www.paypal.me/TFAM Justice. This is the way that we keep moving forward when you all give to this particular cause. We appreciate anything that you give to us tonight.
Hello everyone, this is Jess Dominic, owner of Bullet in Flight Radio, your story, our station, a proud supporter of progressive Christians from around the world. So please join us every Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m. until 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for the best in gospel house, gospel indie, and inspirational word. And if you're looking to submit your music or sermons, please send us an MP3 and artist pick to bulletinflightpros@gmail.com. All submissions are free. Thank you for tuning in, and God bless.
And we have Lifestyle Global Properties. Antonio Mattier is the proprietor, and he is saying he will donate to your church. He will give to your church while you're accomplishing your goal of home ownership. And so Lifestyle Global Properties will donate 10% of the commission earned from your real estate transaction to your choice of City of Refuge or the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries in your name when you utilize their brokerage to purchase or sell a property, whether it be residential or commercial in California or in Georgia. If you're in those two states, you can take advantage of this particular deal. We're so grateful to Antonio and to Lifestyle Global Properties. We thank God for Bishop-elect Sonia E. Williams, RIM Virtual Experience, TNT Tuesday Night Talks, RIM Fellowship United Church of Christ. You can go online to their website at www.rimatlanta.org, and they are inviting you to join them every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for everyday, real, relevant, and Bible-led conversations. And so if you want to find out how you can give to them, you can go on their website, and they can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube. Thank you, Bishop-elect Sonia E. Williams. You can also go to the Healing Place Apothecary. It is a company that is owned and operated and founded by Nubian Flunder. And you can go to her website at www.thp, which stands for the Healing Place Apothecary.com. You will find things for your skin, to have better skin, rose water, hemp. I love that. The black soap, daily green, so many wonderful things for your skin. Please take a look at the website, www.thpapothecary.com. And we have Sky Michelle's Teas and Things, where a kid is the boss. Go to www.skymichelle.com and you will find t-shirts there, dope black, Faith collections, Faith collection, Flunder collection, Cara Motivation collection, and she also customizes t-shirts, mugs, and anything that you might need to move or brand your business. Follow her at I Am Sky Michelle. Cara Solutions, focus on your passion, let Cara handle the rest. That is owned and operated by Susan A. Webley. She is the founder. She does remote productions and video conferencing, admin, and tech support. And so you can let Cara do the heavy lifting so that you can focus on your event. She has custom branding, show development, and training on Zoom, StreamYard, Restream, and more. If you want a consultation, you can email her for a free consultation at sue@cara-solutions.com. That's sue@cara-solutions.com. If you want more information about the wide range of services, you can go to www.cara-solutions.com to find out more about Cara Solutions. We want to advertise with Beyond the Gatekeepers. You may do so by emailing us at beyondthegatekeepersshow@gmail.com. That's beyondthegatekeepersshow@gmail.com. Happy holidays. We will see you in 2022. We will take the next 2 weeks off from myself, Bishop Flunder, of course, Bishop Pearson. Happy holidays to you and your family. God bless you. See you in 2022.